All right, what's the good word? Here we are again, after a brief pause in time. I'm gonna go down a little rabbit hole today. Casey's been doing some interesting research, and we kind of figured the best way to do this was take you through the process. So we're gonna have a beginning, middle, and end to all of this. And, I'm kind of jumping on board here. Casey's taking the lead, but we've got some comparative notes, and we're going to see where this takes us.
Yeah, and it's a wild fucking rabbit hole, dude. There's definitely, we could keep going on this, so we will stop at some point, but we also will come back and probably expand on this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth expanding on, and it covers, social issues that are going on still today. And it's a little bit more than just interesting or coincidental, at least from what we've seen. So,
for sure. And I think, that this ties into this whole thread. For me, it was a big puzzle piece in the grand picture of looking at history and what I think has happened. And should we just get into it?
Sure. This kind of deals with a lot of different wars around the 1800s, and I think part of this, a big part of it for us, it makes it so interesting, is that it illustrates a cover-up, or what we see as a cover-up in the bigger picture of a reset, or using a war in order to, achieve a different end than what you say the war is actually all about. I'm sure we could put it more elegantly, but that's kind of where we're at with it.
We'll get to it for sure.
Layman's terms.
Yeah, we're going to get into how we think this is a cover-up and shit. What it was I was trying to find more info again on the Bloody Island Massacre, and we're going to touch on that in a little bit. And so through that, I had searched this site I was searching around, what are the biggest massacres of Native Americans?
Yep.
So it brought me to the Wikipedia page, and Wikipedia, I think, is good to just see the narrative that is put out there. You know what I mean? So
in some terms, sure, it's controlled and moderated, but
absolutely. But that's to look back on history like this, we have to at least start with the narrative.
Yeah.
And so we're going to we're going to be reading between the lines here on a lot of this stuff. And I think that's a big key to all of this is, I think a lot of these old books and a lot of this old information is like handbooks to the elite or to the controllers, but you have to know what the code is and the steganography and the ciphers and all that shit. And again, we're going to expand on all these ideas and topics as we go and future episodes. But just looking on Wiki on the list of Indian massacres in North America, so it talks about an Indian massacre as an incident between European settlers and indigenous people, wherein one group killed a significant number of the other group outside the confines of mutual combat and war. So
it doesn't matter who wins, yeah. It's still an Indian massacre.
Right. And so then they go on to say, and this is how, they get tricky with words and meanings, and for a decade, shit can mean one thing, and then the next decade they completely flip it.
Yeah.
We see this all the time.
Change the narrative.
Totally, and just it changes. It changes the public's perception of the whole thing. And so
Yeah.
right away as I was looking into this, right off the bat, it says, so it goes on to say, Indian massacre is a phrase whose use and definition has evolved and expanded over time. So right off the bat, even on the mainstream narrative, they're saying that the word is, the definition has changed.
It's very convenient.
Yeah, and so the phrase was initially used by European colonists to describe attacks by indigenous Americans, which resulted in colonial casualties. So originally it meant that the Indians were massacring.
Oh, the victors.
Yeah, and then it was essentially flipped to massacres of the Indians. So it's like the meanings of this whole thing is like screwed from the start.
Who knows what to believe?
Totally. And that's the thing. So just going through all this, we get to a point where here's a listing of some of the events reported then or referred to now as Indian massacre. So they're just putting shit in referred to now, so
By
that's a
today's
convenient way.
definition. It's a nice loophole.
Yeah, I mean, even through time, there's all these wars. Like Germany had the 30 Years' War, when it was a bunch of different conflicts. They'd say it's a 30-year war to lump it in all together. And so that's to me, that's a red flag. And the narrative is when they're doing things like that.
Sure.
And it's definitely here right away. And so they start listing shit from 1518, and there is one from 1325, and this is just kind of an interesting thing. It's called the Crow Creek Massacre, South Dakota.
1325?
That's what it says.
The year?
Yeah.
All right.
And so this is why it says 486 known dead were discovered at an archaeological site near Chamberlain, South Dakota. The victims and perpetrators were both unknown groups of Native Americans. That's what they say. Apparently there's 486 of these bodies there. So
And they count it as a massacre, not as like a burial mound or...
It's called the Crow Creek Massacre.
Interesting.
And so, according to the wiki, it occurred around the mid-14th century between native groups along the Missouri River in South Dakota. It's a national landmark, the site of massacre, blah, blah. So here's another weird, interesting thing. An excavation of part of the site was done in the 50s and then 70s, so that, they're digging it up. Basically, long story short, this was basically they found this. My interpretation is they discovered these bodies and it just did not fit their narrative, and this is how it's swept under the rug. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is crazy bullshit.
Totally. And it said it talks about how there was no massacres pre-Columbus.
Uh-huh.
So what got me started on this was I was looking at the top, I wanted to know what the worst Indian massacres were, or Native American massacres were, whatever. And so I search it, I find a site that doesn't seem like too
Biased.
whatever. Yeah, it was down the list a little bit.
Yeah, hey.
But so I'm looking, the first one they list, Sand Creek Massacre, and I look and it says at the Sand Creek in Colorado Territory in 1864, the Cheyenne village of around 800 was supposed to be protected territory. Chief Blackkettle brokered a deal with the U.S. Army fort nearby, but this proved to be an outright lie. Colonel John Shivington.
Good old Shivington.
And the names are so good, man. Fucking.
What if it's Shivington?
Yeah.
Anyways.
He definitely was very chivalrous.
He got the massacre named after himself,
Yeah.
so good for him.
So, this is a really funny paragraph. Colonel John Chivington had decided that winning battles against local Native American tribes was the best way to become a territorial delegate to Congress.
What a bastard.
Yeah, and then it says when spring 1864 proved fruitless for battle, he used a 700 volunteer militia to burn Native American villages. So
where the hell do you get 700 volunteers?
Right.
Just
So
hey,
totally, man. And so that's
join or die.
Seriously. And so first off, I'm going 1864. That's during the Civil War.
Uh-huh.
So the U.S. Army is attacking Native American tribes during the Civil War. So that got me tripping. And then he says a 700 volunteer militia. So
this is also saying it's like a part of a series of events known as the Colorado War, too,
Right.
which this is like the history.
So exactly, dude, the Colorado War. So they have this whole spiel about these are Indian massacres because they're conflicts outside of war. Yet there's all these conflicts that they actually call wars.
Just wars within wars within wars.
Yeah, and it's just, it's confusing. And honestly, I've never heard of the Colorado War. Sorry.
Hey.
And I've talked about this on Instagram. People fucking have tried to clown, like, oh, you just never paid attention in school. I'm like, dude, I didn't pay attention in school because I knew it was fucking bullshit, dude.
Hey.
Like, trust me, like, I didn't want to go to college because I didn't want to waste my fucking time.
There's different
doing some shit I didn't want to do. Like,
different kinds of education.
Totally. And like, come on, if you're trying to back any kind of if you're trying to back the U.S. educational system, like, you're just gonna look like an idiot.
You're barking up the wrong tree.
You're looking like an idiot, because I don't think there's anyone in their right mind who can actually defend how shitty it is. So just to get back to the list, number 9 happened in 1871, and then number 8 we got 1860, 1 year before the start of the war.
They're bouncing.
Yeah. Number 7 happened in 1852. So we know that they've been killing the natives since supposedly Columbus arrived in history. So it makes sense,
story.
His story. So number 2 was the Bloody Island Massacre, and we're gonna get to that.
That's the one up on Clear Lake, right?
Yeah, that's at Clear Lake, and
really interesting.
this one is crazy, and this one. So, like, this is one of those things, there's so many things that tie into this alternate history, in Tartarian, the mud flood, and, like, this is one of those threads that bridges the gap between all these different theories, and brings it together. But number one deadliest massacre of Native Americans in U.S. history is the Bear River Massacre. So even just on this site, it says it has remained in obscurity largely because it occurred during the Civil War. And, so my fucking radar's just shooting off, right? Keep reading. Next sentence is Mormon settlers had been progressively taking more land from Native Americans. So we got the Mormons in here, which is another red flag. And so, and it comes down, it says, striking back at those stealing their land, the Shoshone soon saw themselves in the crosshairs of Colonel Patrick Connor and 200 California volunteers who vowed to take no prisoners. At daybreak on January 29, 1863, the soldiers attacked, brutally killing 250 Native Americans. They raped any women who hadn't been killed, used axes to crush the skulls of the wounded, set fire to all lodges.
So just total eradication. And I mean, even just off of other sources online, it's like there's a bunch of different causes where some are saying Shoshone caused it, some are saying the Mormons caused it, and all of it is just a convenient crisscross of information to point the finger at one or the other side instead of calling it as it is, just a total eradication and erasure of a people.
Totally.
In order to sustain a new lifestyle, a reset lifestyle.
It's warfare.
Yeah.
It's warfare, and it's eradication. This is all just admitted shit. But like you said, like you've been saying, they sweep shit under the rug. And, you know, we're trying to lift the rugs here, you know. So basically, another clue for the 200 California volunteers. And so another point I want to make a bunch is, like, they refer to all these guys with their military names.
Yeah.
Like Colonel Patrick Connor and his 200 volunteers. Like, so, you know, I just want to continue pointing out that many of these massacres were committed by members of the U.S. Army. And they weren't, anyone in the military knows they're not just letting people go rogue and do shit. You know what I mean? There's orders.
Depending on the narrative, but usually there is orders.
At some point in the chain, though, there's an
something
order.
going on.
There's an order. They're following orders. My point is that, like, these are military operations.
Yeah,
you know, that's the bottom line.
It's a strategic and tactical, planned out thing.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to get to the bigger picture here eventually. That, you know, it's incident after incident of this. And I think that's where you went with it, Casey, this is the rabbit hole in and of itself, is the timeline and the overlap between these happenings and the beginnings of the Civil War as well.
Yeah, totally. And that's what it was. Is so I started thinking, like, what the fuck are these guys? What are these army dudes doing? Fighting all these native tribes during the Civil War.
Yeah,
like, it's crazy. Like, the military over here, the military is trying to free slavery, free all these people, and make them, you know, whatever, make it and the other people are trying to secede and keep slavery. So on one side, they're fighting to end slavery, but then on the other side, at the same time, they're massacring entire Indian or Native American populations.
Yeah. And a lot of these issues, when presented to us in, like, public schools or through just general information, a lot of this isn't grouped together. These, like,
totally
the eradication of the indigenous person, the early American, and slavery and the Union and the Confederacy. Yeah. It's all kind of like a weird whitewash of
compartmentalized.
Totally
whitewashed
of like look over here. Well, I slipped the coin out of your ear.
Totally.
You know, kind of aspect of, like, the illusion of the Wild West and cowboys and Indians, and generally speaking, the formation of the United States of America.
Totally, yeah. I mean, we're definitely all this stuff ties into all of that, the formation of America. We're going to get into how California became how it is today as well.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that started me. I'm like, wait, there's, you know, and that's the thing. That's a tricky thing with, like, this history and stuff that they teach us, is how, you know, like you said, it's tricky because they compartmentalize it, and you think it's like you think of the Civil War and you just, you know, you think of Gettysburg, you think of Robert E. Lee, you think of all this shit, you know, the South, blah, blah, slavery, and then you think of, like, you know, the eradication of the natives, and you just never think of it in the same light, you know, and it's kind of like I've never really thought of it necessarily like that at the same time, and maybe it was just naivety of it, but I think that's just how well they've hidden history, you know, like.
Well, also part of the lead into just this is, like, the strategic nature of all of it, and totally. How planned and swept under the rug everything was. It, you know, it further pushes in our minds this this kind of theory where it's like, hey, it's hiding in plain sight in front of us. It's the pieces just aren't connected yet.
Totally. And, you know, it absolutely, shit is absolutely hidden in plain sight. You know, to think of like, just think of the work it would take to actually rewrite his story.
Sure.
You know, so what that means to me, that means like, and flamenco calls them phantom people and phantom events, and what he means by that is they use the same people and the same events over and over again. They just call them different names, like they're different people in history.
Sure.
They're different events throughout history. And
Yeah.
I do think like a lot of the myths and stories and history that we're told is probably, I think it all has a truth to it because they're not that imaginative to make completely new stories.
Yeah.
But the times, the dates, the people's names, and the events are all switched around. You know, they're just like, we'll move this here, you know, this guy is this or whatever.
That shit's been working for hundreds of
Totally.
years. Why stop now?
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, and I've been saying this a bunch lately. Is like they're really good at doing this.
Yeah.
And we don't know how long they've actually been doing it, but I know at least they've been doing it into, you know, in the last 500 years easily.
And I think it should be noted we're aware of the possibility of like the Civil War, dare I say, not being as it is explained to us.
Yeah,
so
I will get into that as we go, because I feel like when we get to the end of this rabbit hole, what I will propose will be a lot easier to hear after.
a little bit easier to digest.
Yeah, because, you know, we forget, me and you, we can talk about anything.
Whatever, yeah.
And it's not crazy. You know, even if we think it's crazy, we'd be like, yo, what about this? And it's like,
Sure.
we won't think we're crazy. So we forget, at least I forget, you know, we want to get people to understand like where we are coming from in this and how we got here. And like, this is all, we're going to show you all these links we're looking at. Like, anyone can go down this rabbit hole, and you'll see every rabbit hole you go to, their tricks are going to be these same tricks that they're showing us in this.
Very convenient stories.
Yeah. All right, so I don't know. Here's the beginning of the rabbit hole.
Yeah, we get a little off topic, start ranting a bit.
Yeah, but so basically, I looked up California's involvement in the American Civil War, and the Wikipedia. You know, we're going to go off Wikipedia like we said earlier, so don't trip. We're going to take it deeper, though. So it says California's involvement in the American Civil War included sending gold east to support the war effort. Tight. So, you know, essentially the gold rush funded. Okay, you know, great cause.
Yeah.
Okay, great cause. Mm-hmm. You know, ending slavery. Great. That is
the
a great
spirit of
cause.
49.
Yeah. And so, send gold east to support the war effort, recruiting volunteer combat units to replace regular U.S. Army units. So that's a key point, as it says, recruiting volunteer combat units to replace regular U.S. units sent east. So what that is saying, it's not spelling it out clear enough, is that all the Army dudes who were stationed west were basically called to the Civil War, and they recruited a bunch of volunteers from California.
Okay. You get 3 square a day. You get a free gun.
So to
new
fight,
shoes.
to fight in the thing. So
Fuck yeah.
So to replace regular Army units sent east in the area west of the Rocky Mountains, maintaining and building numerous camps and fortifications. So, we could look at all those camps and fortifications.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they probably didn't build any of those fucking things, except the shitty fucking wooden ones that, are long gone. So they would build camps and forts, so that's, great. Yeah. Okay. Cool story.
They got it done.
These send the volunteers out to buy camps and forts, build camps and forts. So suppressing secessionist activity. So many of these secessionists went east to fight for the Confederacy. So suppressing their activity, and securing the New Mexico territory against the Confederacy. And so there it is. There's the party line. They sent him to New Mexico to defend it against the Confederacy. But it says the state of California did not send its units east, but many citizens traveled east and joined the Union Army there, blah, blah, blah. Some of whom became famous. Cool story. So, basically, to read a little further down, they talk about, like, what these people actually did, and that's what we're going to kind of get into.
Part of these guys, whole existence is just to eradicate people, and so it's like,
and these are our heroes still of, like, society.
Yeah.
Like,
it kind of,
they're crowned for it. They were crowned for it.
It really blurs the line. Like, on one hand, you have people going to fight war, and then there's the people who are volunteering, and I don't know. It's just it's a really weird story.
Totally. It gets weirder, bro. It gets weirder. So, just to get down further on this page, at the outbreak of the Civil War, Southern California secession seemed possible. And what's tricky about this too, like, they don't mention, like, I don't know, they put things out of context all the time, like, and we'll probably get into some shit with the Mexican-American War, but, like, just how we'll see, you guys will see, like, how they twist history. And let me find the thing here. California volunteers called up. So California, along with Oregon and Kansas, so it'll be interesting to look up what their volunteer armies did at this time. Blah, blah, was not included in the initial call-up of 75 militia due to its vast distances, too far away to go fight. Blah, 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 blah. These volunteers replaced the regular troops transferred to the east before the end of 1861. So they were here in the West right up into the start of the Civil War, basically. And that's what I'm trying to point out as well through this, is they were in the West fighting in their posts right up until 1861, which is when they were sent to the Civil War, and they got all these volunteers to fight their war for them. But you're about to see that these California volunteers weren't fighting the war that has been portrayed.
Yeah, so they're all
fighting a different war.
All those fuckers got recruited in California, and then they sent them to, like, Oregon and Kansas.
Yep.
So it was this combined, planned effort in California, and then pushed north, east, and south. Makes sense.
Totally.
It's tactical. I mean,
totally.
Hey, what are these guys up to?
So, Civil War era forts and camps in California. It's all interesting stuff we can get a lot of info from. So, at this time, the U.S. had a number of military forts to defend against the Indian threat and to solidify U.S. claim to the state. And so, right there, that's a tricky way to fucking describe we're taking over your fucking land. You know what I mean? we're here and we're taking over your fucking shit.
Get used to it.
Yeah, that's a tricky way of saying that. So, they say that, I don't know how, whatever, they got all these California units at all these different camps. A lot of them are really interesting and are influential in all this, his story.
And they had like some cute nicknames for them too. They're like the whole platoon or whatever. It was the Dragoons.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Dragoons or whatever.
They're goons for sure.
Just going through like what's on Wikipedia, there's so many clues. So, first of all, we could look at all these forts and everything, and we'll look at some. We're trying to stay, a little focused. The thing is, you start looking at his story, it sends you on so many threads, and like that's not accidental.
It's a spin out.
Totally. So, we'll get into basically reading down this. You start talking about all these conflicts, and they start talking about wars. So here's another one. Camp Independence was established on Oak Creek, nearby modern Independence, California, on July 4th, 1862, during the Owens Valley Indian War. It's like, what the fuck is the Owens Valley Indian War?
Motherfuckers love to call like everything a war.
Right, except when they want to describe what the conflicts were with the Native Americans. They don't want to call it a war, they want to call it a massacre, which technically is, conflicts outside of war, but then they want to call it a war. That's the thing. And so the Owens Valley War, as we come across, as we just go, we're just going to go. So the Owens Valley War was fought between 1862 and 1863 during the Civil War by California volunteers and local settlers against Owens Valley Paiutes and their Shoshone and Kauai Sioux allies in the Owens Valley of California and southwestern Nevada. The removal of a large number of the Owens River Native Californians to Fort Tejon in 1863 was considered the end of the war. But it says minor hostilities continued until 1867. So it's still, it was still fucking going, whatever.
I think what we're trying to illustrate here is more or less like they write the script, and
totally,
if we accept it, then it makes a difference.
Totally. I mean, and it is a script. What got me just thinking is like, okay, they're having these military conflicts in the Civil War to end slavery, and at the same time they're having these conflicts to eradicate and genocide Native Americans. First off, and that's straight up mainstream narrative history.
Yeah.
First off, like, how does that make sense?
It doesn't.
Totally.
None of it does.
Totally. So to me, it has my thinking that this is all the same war.
Okay.
And
I follow.
I think this is all one conflict that goes back probably freaking a few hundred years, if not maybe 500 years. But I think I could easily say it goes back to like 1812 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, by all signs, according to the almighty internet, it looks like that is the case.
I mean, yeah, and that's the narrative,
And starting from 1812 and moving forward into the Civil War, almost year by year, there's these wars and conflicts with indigenous people that are listed on the record and just didn't stop, like an endless 100-year war.
Exactly. And just the fact that, like, how they've twisted it to where it's not a war is just, to me, a red flag that, this is like a fishy moment in his story. And I think, like, probably the best, the best way a really good thread through this is to follow some of these motherfuckers.
Sure.
And, you know, we've talked about a lot of these guys, and, you know, John C. Fremont is one of our main little nemesises in this founding of history. And he would have been an easy one to follow a rabbit hole on, but Nathaniel Lyon has always popped up, and he's popped up in the Bloody Island Massacre in Clear Lake.
Yeah.
And
as previously mentioned.
Totally. And he has a street named after him in San Francisco, among other things. So
that's Lyon.
Yeah, Lyon, Nathaniel Lyon. And so just to pull up his wiki, so we're going to kind of follow his career and thread this all together for you guys,
so
as best as I can.
Out of the gate, he was the first Union general to be killed in the American Civil War, and that was in 1861.
Mm-hmm. And Missouri, and there's a great story too. He's a hero.
Yeah,
he's a hero of it, and so you're like, cool. He's a hero of the Civil War. He fought against slavery, whatever.
He's getting it.
Yeah, and then so you go down to the very next fucking paragraph on his wiki, and it just goes, he had fought in the Second Seminole War in Florida and the Mexican-American War. The Second Seminole War, also known as the Florida War, was a conflict from 1835 to 1842 in Florida between groups of Native Americans and Black Indians, collectively known as Seminoles in the United States. And it says after being assigned to Kansas, okay, so all of a sudden he's assigned to Kansas. Just to touch on Bleeding Kansas while we're here, it was this conflict in Kansas, and basically there was a bunch of political killings at the time. There was a huge fight between, the slavers and anti-slavers, and they called a prelude to the American Civil War. So it's kind of like, maybe you could call it the false flag event that led to the start of the Civil War. I mean, and so we get into his career, and so he was a West Point graduate.
Very fancy lad.
So it just breezes over how he served in the Seminole Wars, the Mexican-American War. So let's just see what it says.
He's got an extensive career.
So let's read. Let's just read the wording.
Is doing work for the U.S. Union Army.
Yeah, he was putting in work. So despite denouncing American involvement in the Mexican Wars, even though he denounced the whole war he just fought in,
he can't even fucking.
He was promoted to first lieutenant for conspicuous bravery in capturing Army artillery at the Battle for Mexico City. And so despite him, denouncing the war, he was promoted.
Good
and
for him.
He didn't turn it down like a denouncer of the war would. He took his promotion for being a fucking soldier in the war.
Yeah, he did some shit.
And then, so this is a freaking, I've never heard of this shit. It says, although he was eligible for membership, Lyon did not join the Aztec Club of 1847 when it was formed in Mexico City in 1847.
Yeah.
And so, dude, that's just so weird because, this is like a clue. This is like a weird clue or something. Because, if they were
club itself.
Yeah. Because, I feel like if they were trying to hide these societies and these secret groups, they wouldn't mention the stupid line about how he was eligible for membership, but he did not join it.
Right.
What's the point of putting this in his wiki?
It's a weird reference.
And then to look into this Aztec Club of 1847, it just brings up more flags. So it was basically it was a veterans club for officers of the Mexican-American War.
Right.
and
a society.
a society of gents. And so the Aztec Club's first president was John A. Quitman.
Okay.
And a quick look into old Johnny Boy.
He looks like a son of a fucking gun.
He looks like a son of a bitch. And the hand in the pocket, I don't think any of us need to tell you what that means.
This has got some nefarious origins.
And not until in the legacy on his page it mentions there is a lodge of free and accepted Masons in Georgia which is named after him. So clearly this is some weird secret club. It's weird that they mention on his page, whatever. So, yeah. So
I mean, they got some. It's emulating the Society of Cincinnati, a fraternal hereditary society that was founded to commemorate the American Revolutionary War. Oh.
So there, it's a secret club for military guys,
Some grandfathered in bullshit.
Totally. So after the Mexican War, Lyon was then posted to the frontier.
Oh, got stuck.
That's called, he's ordered to the frontier, where forces under his command orders. This was not a rogue regiment. This was a real military fucking regiment.
And they perpetrated some units.
Totally. This is a military outfit. And they go to Clear Lake and hit this Bloody Island massacre. And so this is another one of those ties into all this shit. So basically the Bloody Island massacre, there was these two brothers, or two friends. They were given this land by one of the Vallejos.
Yeah.
So General Vallejo, in 1846, I believe 1847, there's a thing called the Bear Flag Revolt. We've talked about this hella times. And so just for everyone, basically like 33 people went and kidnapped General Vallejo and either maybe his sons or like
some of his
brother.
people.
But it was like, so they kidnapped them, held them hostage, and claimed California as its own republic. And this is called the Bear Flag Revolt. And officially happened in Sonoma. And so like John C. Fremont and all these other Free Brick 33 guys were involved in that. And the interesting thing is, so they went to Vallejo's house, knocked on the door, and like took him hostage.
Grabbed him.
Where they had him hostage, treated him killer. Like this is even in the narrative.
Have like a nice staycation.
Dude, literally.
With some new friends.
They probably only had him for 2 or 3 weeks, I think. And so they ended up letting him go. The Bear Flag fell apart, But a year later, 1848, the Mexican-American War is coming to an end. The good guys are winning, the Americans.
Yep.
And strangely, Vallejo never took vengeance or punished any of those captors.
Oh, it was all good.
And even stranger so, he was highly influential in the negotiations like post-war, and especially in the negotiations of California becoming a part of the United States.
Right.
And so of course, he was rewarded with all this land. There's still a city named after him, Vallejo, in the Bay Area.
Oh, yeah. Fucking...
Yeah, E40, Mac Dre, some of the best rappers.
City of grapes, baby.
Yeah, some of the best rappers out of the Bay Area are from Vallejo. So to just make this plot even thicker.
What's the Click? The Click is...
Yeah, the Click. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Magazine Street. Mm-hmm. To thicken the plot even more, so to rewind it on this Bloody Island massacre, Andrew Kelsey and Charles Stone, this land they were given was given to them by one of the Vallejos. It was given to him by Salvador Vallejo in 1947. So tie it in. We're tying it in.
Thank you for
so at the time, it was legal to have Native American slaves. So they tortured and freaking brutalized slaves on their land at Clear Lake for a long time until
just trying to flush them out.
Yeah, they're just trying to live, They're just, whatever. So basically, the natives revolted against him eventually and killed him. So word gets back.
Good.
Yeah, exactly. That
fucking kick rocks.
Should be the cool end of the story.
Yeah.
Except they were connected to the Vallejos. You know what I mean?
Now they're gonna exact vengeance.
So it became a thing. So, here we go with the Dragoons.
Oh, the Droogies came up?
Yep. So on May 15th, 1850, a contingent of the 1st Dragoons Regiment of the United States Cavalry under Nathaniel Lyon, then still a lieutenant, and Lieutenant J.W. Davidson, tried to locate the natives to punish them. They instead, to locate Augustine's band to punish them. Instead, it came upon a group of Pomo Indians that they killed, old men, women, and children. Oh, so they were looking for Augustine's band, and I think we skipped over that part. Does it matter? No. That's who they claim killed these people. Instead, they came upon all these natives and killed them. So the counts vary of how many were killed, anywhere from 50 to like 400.
Yeah, that's real fucking vague.
Totally. And so that's a weird thing. So that's it. That's about it on the site. But so I got turned on to the Bloody Island Massacre, like totally unrelated.
Yeah. No, I remember
to all this.
You sending me the link in it just because it was so fucking bizarre.
Totally.
Like we didn't even really get into the whaling boat.
Well, we're about to.
Yeah, that's like.
Yeah. So basically,
if you've been in California, like, just imagine the era, the time of, we're talking about, and getting a fucking whaling boat up to Clear Lake. There's a lot of missing fucking information going on here, and it just sort of.
Yeah. Well, let me fill in some of the missing pieces. So basically, they couldn't get that story on Wiki is not how I found the story on other sites. And so looking on other sites, they go into much greater detail. Basically, they retreated to an island. They couldn't get them, with their dragoon thing. Yeah. So the stories on this vary as well, but I found multiple that say so. They went and got a whaling boat, and some cannons, and hauled it up to Clear Lake, and literally blasted the natives on the island.
Decimated.
Yeah, and to look into that even more, what I found was that the boat they got, whether it was a whaling boat or not, I'm going to say it was probably a battleship of some kind. Okay.
All right.
Because a boat plus cannons equals a battleship, whether it is a whaling boat with cannons on it or not. So chances are it was probably an actual battleship, Yeah. And where did he get the battleship from? He got it from Benicia. And who did he get the ship from? He got it from General Vallejo. So here's
what a fella.
That's the tie-in. And so they go up there and they blast, dude, they go crazy. It's crazy. They fucking brought a battleship up there. In the words of Nathaniel Lyon, who led the attack, the island became a perfect slaughtering pen, as the Indians had no way of escaping. So that's our Union war general hero, talking about these natives were the perfect slaughtering pen.
Yeah.
11 years before he was killed in the Civil War.
Good riddance.
Yes, absolutely good riddance. And so this is the crazy thing to think about, is like this Union war hero committed one of the greatest atrocities
Totally.
that on record that we know of, and but he's a hero.
Yeah.
And
a celebrated fucking establisher.
Totally. And so to me, I feel like, this is all one event. Like, this is all one war. They were fighting this war in the West on the frontier against what we'll call Native Americans. And then you went straight into the Civil War, to fight with the Union and the Confederacy.
I think what it really illustrates to me is, whether it's 100-year war or it's a war that's still going on today, that started in early 1800, and it's been fought and had the sand kicked over it and renamed a million times and absorbed into different conflicts and massacres and wars, and it really all we're talking about is one big push to create a new society, a new continent, and a new narrative after a giant reset.
Totally. I mean, dude, you pretty much said it perfect right there.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one conflict, and like you said too, has been an ongoing conflict. Like, these guys went from just massacring Indians, straight into the Civil War. Makes no sense to me. To me, what I think is that this is all part of one war, and that the natives that they were fighting on the West were related, if not the same people who they say were the Confederate Army in the South. And whether they were related, whatever, but I feel like the Civil War was this cover story against the Moors in the South. And I'm continuing digging up this stuff about the Native Americans as we know them and understand are absolutely not what they were, and it was a program job.
Sure.
And this whole Wild West, this whole Indian massacre thing, this whole narrative and story, yes, they were massacred and genocided, but were they what we say they were? I don't think so. I honestly think it was all part of this, what we refer to as like this Tartarian one world culture. This was all cover stories to describe the war and stamping out of this culture.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, there's a lot packed into that, and I think there's a lot of information we couldn't fit into 10 years worth of videos. I mean, we're going to provide links and probably continue discussion on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just, a discussion for sure. We are absolutely have no idea what actually happened.
Yeah,
in our history,
I mean,
man.
I think we've watched together a lot of videos just about wars, whether it's World War I, II, Civil War, even Vietnam, being planned strategic operations to annihilate not only an inconvenient culture, but also the past, and decimate ruins of what was once castles and evidence of a higher society that existed before us. And so traveling with that mindset into this and attaching it into California specifically, I mean, this goes obviously beyond California, but it's easy for us to see those connections and see the cover-ups and how we've all been duped in this in the grand scheme of things of
Totally.
saying like literally fucking question everything.
Yeah. And I think we focus on California because we take a lot of pride in being from here and whatnot. But I know this story, it said earlier, there's Oregon and Kansas volunteer militias. This isn't just California. This is what we found. I tend to stick to the California stuff because I'm just really interested. But there's other threads. This stuff, it didn't just happen here, and this isn't the only evidence of it.
It happened in every fucking state.
Totally. And all it takes is just looking, just questioning, like you said, question everything.
I remember in my teens and 20s being involved in punk and counterculture and hearing about injustices and the things that even where did all the indigenous children go from these planned church schools and foster care systems to now in this day and age hearing about mass graves and burial sites being found, and that's just in 20 years.
Totally.
So what else are we gonna be sitting here finding out day by day as the age of information just continues to crack wide open?
Fuck yeah. I know you're on as well. I really want this to be a community,
Yeah.
I'm open to all these theories, even there's stuff that I don't necessarily agree with, but there's parts of it that tie in and it all ties in. We're all on the right path. Instead of trying to prove each other wrong or fight about shit, let's compare fucking notes and come together. I don't think I'm 100% right at all. I'm probably fucking 0.1% right.
Yeah.
But that's more than anyone who doesn't question.
That's true.
And if all of us are 1% right, 100 of us could make 100% right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
The more I talk to people about stuff and share info, the more info comes out.
I mean, I think a conscious exchange of ideas is really healthy, and critical thinking in general is needed more and more in this day and age when we're being taught not to pay attention to anything and use the conveniences that are free for us in front of us instead of actually being diligent and coming up with
yourself.
your own conclusions.
Totally. Thinking for yourself.
Sharing ideas and being open and accepting to other people's ideas. No matter how far-fetched they seem, it creates open conversation with somebody that you wouldn't have spoke with otherwise.
Totally. And that's going to be the downfall. This is a losing battle. I think a lot of these victories and deciphering what our real history is really is a personal victories,
Yeah.
If we can take back our individuality and that, then that is the revolution.
How many layers of manipulation and mindfuck is it to say the revolution is taking back the government? And you look at that and say, well, maybe your participation and your want for participation in the system and in the government is wrong in the first place, and possibly readjusting your ideals to saying you have your own society and community within you yourself.
Totally.
And breaking away from that system
Totally.
that you've been manipulated to think you matter in.
Yeah, I mean, they paint this illusion of this grand community when it's so far from the truth. Like, honestly, your fucking community is the people on your block.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a pay-to-play reality.
Totally, man. I think we went down a killer little journey today, and
well, so the next video we're coming back at you with something different, a little subjective reality, how you look at things, something that, like, maybe a couple little changes in a picture you're looking at can alter that image in front of you 100%, and maybe try and tie that into the brainwashing we go through in an everyday basis with advertising every fucking second of the day. Woo!
All right. Until next time.